Welcome back to the If Anything, I'm Everything podcast. I'm your host, Kisha Chanelle. And today I have another wonderful guest, and we are going to be talking about the elephant in the room. So, you know, I think one of the most untalked about issues amongst women and amongst mothers is postpartum depression. And so I have on the show today Christina Mendoza. She is a mother of three, and she is going to kind of share with us her story. She's been married for 11 years, and I think it's going to be very impactful to hear just the process of figuring it out and then the process of actually working through it, right? So, this, my loves, is the elephant in the room. Thank you for joining us today. So, the topic today is about postpartum depression, and I have Christina here with me.
Hello.
And we feel like this is going to be such an important topic, right? Because when you think about postpartum depression, or if you even think about it, right? Like, I've had two children, and you always think about being strong and like overcoming things that are going on in your life without really taking a moment to break down those things. So, doing a little research on postpartum depression, or you may hear me say PPD, has really opened my eyes to how prevalent this form of depression is amongst our mothers. And so, over 3 million cases are diagnosed a year. And that's just what's diagnosed, right? Like, that is not, again, the strong mother trying to overcome why they're tired or why, they're feeling a certain kind of way. And so that just says that, you know, there's a bigger conversation that needs to be had for women to really understand that if you're not okay, it is okay to seek help. And it's really for the benefit of you and your child, you and your family, right? So 1 in 9 mothers have postpartum depression. And I mean, there's different scales, right? It can be either severe or moderate. Regardless of what it is, I think it's important that we address it, that we talk about it, we accept it, and understand that some people deal with these things, right? And I think once we start accepting people, we can start really changing the way we view things, the way we view people, probably the way we have our day-to-day interactions, right? Like, just take consideration for somebody else, because you never really know what that person is going through. So, Christina, do you mind kind of sharing with us when you first realized that you were suffering from PPD?
Yes, I would say that I first realized that I was suffering from postpartum depression shortly after having my third baby. I would say she was probably about 4 weeks old. Shortly after that, I was very, very emotional. I was emotional. I was sad. I would cry. I had so many mixed emotions. Like, literally, I had no idea like what I was actually feeling at that time. Aside from those emotions, not only did I have those, but after just giving birth, I had thoughts of, of course, how was I going to be a fit mother? How was I going to be a fit wife? How was I going to manage all this? I believe just really overanalyzing on those questions, it really brought more emotion out of me. I really didn't know exactly what I was feeling, but once again, those questions still came to my mind on, how was I going to equally love my kids? How was I going to be a good spouse? How was I going to fit in this, additional family member into our family? I just didn't really know my responses to my own questions. And I do believe that that also had me suffer, from the postpartum depression a little bit more to where, I would just cry. I would just, it could be, me watching a TV show or me just holding my baby, me having a conversation, and I would just, have tears in my eyes and I would just cry. I would, of course, excuse myself, and, no one really knew. Because I did shield it from quite a bit of people in my household, but I would just excuse myself, and whenever those tears did come, I would say, oh, they were allergies, or I would just make excuses up for it. But I once again, I wasn't really sure those exact feelings that I was feeling. So I would say I also knew that I was suffering from something. I would wake up and I would go around the house and I would just open up all the curtains because I just really, really enjoyed the daylight. I really, really wanted to see light come into the house because for some reason that brought me peace. As soon as that went away, I opened up the curtains, and then, I got to doing, other things like, breastfeeding my daughter, or, rather it be making breakfast or throwing the laundry into, throwing clothes into the laundry. Those feelings came back. I can just remember that during the day was the worst part of my day. Like I really, really dreaded waking up because I knew then I was going to have to face reality and face my feelings, face those questions, those uncertainties, all the emotions that I was feeling. And so I would say I really look forward to nighttime. The nighttime was really, really, peaceful for me, I would say, because I could not wait um, for the nighttime to approach and for my baby to go to sleep so that I could sleep, so that I could really just close in on, once again, those emotions and those uncertainty questions that I was having, because I knew during the night I wasn't going to have to feel some sort of way or think about those questions that, of course, I had.
I think that so what you're saying is while you're living it and going through it, you don't necessarily know that there's something wrong, but you know there's something wrong, right? Like you're starting to feel different, and that doing research and all of the sources for the information that I have and that I am sharing with you guys today, it's in the show notes, right? So if you know someone that is looking to trying to figure out if they are maybe suffering from PPD or if they are exhibiting signs, all of that information is there. And the thing that I found is that not wanting to do things that you normally like doing is a sign of PPD. So therefore, when prior to, exhibiting these symptoms, you like to walk around the house. I think everybody loves natural light. Like I love natural light. Like yeah, that's the very first thing that I do when I get up is I go and open all of my windows, right? It's just nothing like that natural lighting. But going through that change, right? Not wanting to do those things and then wishing for darkness, I think
Mhm.
that is an exact sign of I'm dealing with not wanting to do something that I wanted. But not only am I wanting it to be dark and I've just woken up, but I'm wanting to not think about what I have going on or not deal with what I have going on because I feel like in the dark, that's when I don't have to deal with anything. That's when my child is asleep. That's when I can sleep. When you started realizing that something was wrong, not quite right, did you feel comfortable with seeking help? Like, tell me about that. Like, how did you get to the point where you were like, something, like, I got to figure out something?
I would say that I did not feel comfortable seeking help because, once again, I wasn't sure what I was feeling and I wasn't sure how to. I knew that I could express my feelings, but I just wasn't sure if anyone would understand exactly what I was going through. So I would say one morning I woke up and I was an emotional wreck. I was sad, I was crying, I could barely hold myself together. And I said to myself, if I to go through this like one more minute, one more hour, like I don't know what's literally gonna happen to me. Like I don't. So I I made the decision to call my doctor, my OBGYN. I really was anxious to know what I needed to do, what those next steps for me would look like, um, and what exactly I was experiencing because I just knew that I couldn't take this anymore. It wasn't good for me. It wasn't good. I knew it wouldn't be good for my daughter and it wouldn't be good for the household. So I called my OBGYN, and I spoke with the receptionist. Thankfully and gratefully, she was very, very accepting to me. And I basically just broke down to her and explained to her everything that I was going through. I'm so glad that she was, that extra ear to listen. So she did pass the phone to the nurse practitioner. The nurse practitioner, of course, she took the phone call. I expressed to her again what was going on, and she said, "Okay." She said, "I will definitely set you up a virtual visit. You will be meeting with Dr. Roth. Right now, she is in a room, and she is meeting with the patient. So as soon as she's done, I will have her give you a call. But meanwhile, we'll go ahead and set you up with your virtual visit. You'll meet with her through your phone or through the virtual visit." I was so thankful for that. And oh my goodness, those 30 minutes that I waited for her to call, or I'm sorry, for me to hop on the call with her, I was anxious. My anxiety was through the roof. I just could not wait to finally be able to speak with someone in regards to, my feelings and what I was going through. The time came and we hopped on our virtual call. I just cried. I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried and I could not express to her what I was going through. I just cried. I'm grateful once again that she allowed me to, really just get myself together. And I explained to her exactly what I was going through, what I was experiencing. We had a good talk. She, expressed to me that, of course, these things are normal, that I was going through postpartum depression. She expressed to me that everything was going to be okay. And I could definitely, of course, seek help, like maybe speaking with therapists, or, of course, and in addition to that, she can prescribe me with some medication, like a low dosage of Zoloft, which is a antidepressant. I did express to her I could do both, but at this time, I really, really need to have myself together.
Mm.
So I really, really need to have some sort of medication just so that I can get myself together so that I can be able to function not only for myself, but for my family. She said that she would call me in the medication. She would call in the medication to Walgreens. So of course she called in my medication to the pharmacy. And it wasn't until then that I was then forced to tell my partner what was going on, because at that time, of course, I had just had the baby. I wasn't breathing, and I needed my medication. It was going to be ready within an hour. And, of course, I needed it to be picked up. So that is when, of course, I had to have that hardcore conversation with my partner and inform him that, of course, this medication will need to be picked up. And this is exactly what I have been going through and I was experiencing. And he had no clue.
Yeah.
He absolutely had no clue. And he, of course, one of his questions was, why didn't you inform me? Why didn't you come to me? And why didn't you let me know what you were going through? But, once again, because I had never gone through this and I did not know what I was feeling, I really didn't know who to turn to or who I could turn to, because, once again, these are not things that, people
We
are
don't even talk
openly.
Right. We don't even talk about it because illness is a problem, right? If you have an illness, then you're a problem. Or, no, people are so consumed with appearances, right? They're so consumed with what other people think about them. And if I show or look as if I have a problem, then I'm inadequate, or that I can't, or people are going to look at me different. Like, I'm glad that you were able to get to that point where you actually trusted your doctor. It's amazing how much trust we put into those people that help us, when we're sick or when we are, having children, and how much we trust them enough to go to them. And I think it's their duty, number one, to ensure that they hear us out. But I don't think necessarily in this case, it just meant that you trusted him less. It's just the unknown of how to have real conversations with people, right? Because sometimes the way that you communicate with someone on a regular basis can 100% be the determination on whether or not I tell you something that I deem is very personal and very important to me. If you are the kind of person, and not to say that your husband is, but just in general, right? Like if I have an issue and I know that I can go to one friend and she's going to be very accepting, she's always going to really help me through whatever issue that I'm going through, I'm going to trust going to her first, right? Because I could tell her anything. But then if I have that one friend that as soon as I tell them something, oh, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or why do you feel that way, or that questions or makes you feel as if something really is wrong with you, I can't see that making the determination to whether or not you open up to that person, to whether or not you feel comfortable with letting them in on what's actually happening. Aside from the wanting it to be dark, the overthinking, right? Because it's a symptom of PPD, the overthinking. Big life changes can really factor into depression. And like these are just some of the symptoms, right? So it says, like, how do you know you have postpartum depression? These are some of the symptoms, right? The feeling restless or moody, the feeling sad, hopeless, or overwhelmed, crying a lot, having thoughts of hurting the baby, having thoughts of hurting yourself, not having any interest in the baby, having no energy or motivation, eating too little or too much, sleeping too little or too much, having trouble focusing and making decisions. There's having memory problems, feeling worthless, guilty, or like a bad mother. Do you remember experiencing any of these other symptoms?
I do, yes. I would definitely say I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried for everything. I would just be sitting watching a show and I would cry for no reason. There was really no reason for me to cry, but I would just cry. Um, and I do believe that, of course, some of those signs, for myself experiencing PPD was, me crying because that's typically not me. I
Mhm.
don't cry for everything. Of course, I did feel, tired. I felt overwhelmed. I felt, fear that I wasn't going to be a good parent. I wasn't going to be a good mother to, my three kids, because of course, now how am I going to divide the time for all three of them and show them, the unconditional love that they truly deserve? I felt like I wasn't going to be that fit mother for them that they needed me to be. I felt hopeless. I felt guilty, once again, bringing a third baby into this world. Okay, well, what are we going to do? That means less time for them, more time for, their new sibling. Once again, I was anxious for night to come. I even felt paranoid that something bad was, drastically going to happen to myself and to my family. And I did not want those feelings. And of course, I could be here at the house and I felt that. And here I am calling Hector and calling, of course, Matt, my kids like, are you guys okay? And they're like, yes, everything's fine. And, I just had that fear that something bad was going to happen. And, having all those feelings and all those emotions at once, it literally, it drove me to a point where I did not know how to move forward without seeking the help that I truly needed and deserved. I think a lot of times as mothers, we don't allow our time to gather our thoughts, but also focus on ourselves because we're so busy, focusing on, the household, the kids, their events or, their things that they have going on that we truly, forget about ourselves and our feelings and what we're going through. So I, I would really say, since having my daughter, it has really opened my eyes up to a lot of things that I wish I would have done sooner. And I would just really say, of course, spending time with yourself and recognizing those signs that, that you may not be all together, you may not be right, but, of course, allowing yourself that opportunity to recognize that and, seek that help, rather that be, going to the doctor, or whether that be going to your therapist or maybe having that conversation with your partner or your friend that something is not right, of course, seeking that help and giving yourself grace throughout the situation will help you and definitely go, a long way. And I just think that at times when we are going through these things, once again, if we have never experienced it, we don't know what it looks like, and we don't have the exact resources that we need to get the help that we need, because once again, those are not topics that are up for discussion in the household. Like, I can't ever recall having a conversation with my mother or with my sister about depression, or about feelings that we have. A lot of times, being brought up and into the world, you're kind of taught to tough it out, or don't cry, or and not really express your true emotions. So whenever you are going through something like that, you don't know really how to feel. And so I really just encourage everyone to, of course, seek that help, but recognize your emotions and seek that help that you truly, truly deserve. Like, give yourself grace, give your body grace. You just gave birth to another human, which is truly incredible. And, of course, no other man can do, only us women can do it. So do that for yourself. And rather that be, of course, seeking help through a therapist or taking a medication, no judgment zone here. You have to do what is best for you so that you can function on your day to day.
Absolutely. And that's powerful, right? To know that I'm having a hard time even rationalizing what I already know, right? Like, you're already in the process of raising two children successfully, right? But to all of a sudden start thinking that, oh my God, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be able to? I think that we have to really start paying attention to ourselves, like you said, like give yourself the opportunity to understand who you are, right? To understand what it is that you are going through, so that you can recognize that there is something going on versus ignoring it or disregarding it, to where it could really lead into something more serious. I think that we often put everybody in front of us, put everyone's needs before our own. And so it's kind of that the way that we grew up, right? Growing up in urban homes, those conversations just weren't had. Like and I know for a fact in my household, we never talked about emotions. Like, how are you feeling? How, like, emotions are just, they were not discussed. It's taken me becoming an adult and really understanding, like, that I'm not going to do it the same way, right? Like, I'm very cognizant of my children, their emotions. I can tell how they are feeling just by looking in their face. Um, the conversations of it's okay to not be okay are common conversations around here. If you need a moment, I'll give you a moment. If you need me, I'm here for you. So it's just that stigma that we kind of grew up in, is like, almost illness is almost kind of like a weakness, right? Or like emotion is kind of like a weakness, but it's actually your strength, because if you're no good, how else are you going to take care of the things that you need to take care of, or do the things that you need to do. And so I kind of have a question for you in regards to when you went to the doctor. Like, so in doing my research, we often call um, moments after a woman gives birth, if she's down and out, not really feeling well, they call it baby blues. And I've heard that, right? Like, I've heard that growing up, but I've never heard postpartum depression. So did the doctor kind of ever say, hey, maybe this could be baby blues, or did she automatically know, hey, I think you are dealing with postpartum depression?
No, she knew I was dealing with postpartum depression. When having that conversation with her, she did not even mention baby blues. She knew automatically I was dealing with postpartum depression. And so, when that conversation was had, she asked me, what is it that you would like for me to do? Of course, we can, provide you with referrals to a therapist and, provide you with, a prescription. We can start with the mild dosage and then, see how that goes out. And so I immediately, of course, opted into the prescription because I knew I needed it in order for me to keep my sanity, but also in order for me to function and be able to maintain the household with this new baby. And so she knew it was postpartum. And, I had somewhat of an idea, but I was not sure exactly, once again, what it was, because once again, this was not something that I had ever, dealt with or experienced. And I have never been diagnosed with, any kind of postpartum depression or depression or anxiety. So it was really, really new for me.
In regards to PPD and depression, there's three manners of treatment.
Mhm,
Um, the route that you took, medication. There's also therapy,
mhm.
and there's also electroconvulsive therapy. Um, but that's only what they recommend in extreme cases. So these treatments can be used alone or together, but we highly urge you to talk to your doctor or nurse about the benefits and risks of taking medicine to treat depression when you are pregnant or breastfeeding. And just remember that getting help is a sign of strength. Christina's story is just beginning, and we are going to bring the rest of the story to you next Wednesday. So please join us next week for part 2 of The Elephant in the Room.